Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. Well, the Halloween season is upon us, and it's time for me to share my favourite horror-themed games that can be played solo. Why solo, you ask? Well, I have no friends. Not anymore. And at least no one can hear me scream. I'm just kidding, I never had any friends. In this video, we'll look at my top 5 games that scare the heebie-jeebies out of me, perfectly suitable to play on a Halloween night. I love horror-themed games, it's probably my favourite genre, so it was quite difficult for me to narrow this down to just 5. I like the feeling of impending doom and fear, and they normally come with engrossing artwork and an immersive story. So sit tight, dim the lights, and prepare to be terrified. Before we start, there's an honourable mention that was dipping in and out of the list, and that is Nemesis from Awakened Realms. So stop your grinning and drop your linen. The only reason I've pulled it is because it's far better in the multiplayer and semi-co-op mode. For solo games, I play with 2 crew members, where you wake from hibernation and are somewhat disorientated. You then need to complete set objectives for both your crew members and either escape safely via the pod system or go back into hibernation, making sure the vessel you are on is in working order and going to the correct destination. As you play, you'll be exploring the ship by turning over room tiles, so the main layout of the ship will change with each game, and rooms can be searched for equipment and also have a special action. You'll need to progress carefully, as making too much noise will attract hostile aliens who have a taste for disorientated crew members. Each character has a unique set of cards used to carry out actions where, dependent on your class or role, you have select special abilities and can do certain tasks better than others. Nemesis can be pretty brutal, and if you're not careful, end quite quickly, and it's game over, man. Events can cause you to become slimed, and the aliens are pretty hardcore, especially if you meet the Queen. Unfortunately, harsh language doesn't work, but you do have weapons available and can also find others during exploration. Contact with the intruders can cause you to become infected and thereafter provide a warm, cosy place for lava within your chest cavity. If you want to burn them with fire, no problem. The ship is ablaze anyway, and this spreads pretty quickly, not to mention its structural integrity is shot to pieces. The quality of the components are fantastic, and the game has great table presence. If you enjoy this solo, I implore you to try the Untold Stories campaign that has a mind-blowing story. Well, I've carried out a video playthrough for all chapters, and you can find them on my channel, but there will be spoilers, as well as a beginner's guide to painting the miniatures. Let's get to the top 5. At 5 is Lifeline, a survival horror game based on the cult classic film Alien, where you are a lone survivor on board a ship deep in space. Your only chance of survival is to make your way across the massive hulk to the escape shuttle, collecting essential supplies on the way, including the ship's cat, and escape using the shuttlecraft. This all seems fairly straightforward, except there's a hostile alien on board, stalking you from the shadows, and the ship's self-destruct system is activated, so time is of the essence. The game is played out on an enormous board representing the blueprint of the ship, the Valley Forge. You start on one side of the board and have to make your way across to the shuttle bay. Most of your actions are carried out by playing cards that provide options as to what can be done, such as moving to other rooms, completing objectives, exploring, and of course using weapons. Getting to the escape shuttle is probably the easy part. First, you need to ensure you have the correct supplies in order to leave the doomed vessel. The board is littered with resource tokens that, once collected, are placed on various areas of the shuttle loadout tracks, and where they are placed is your choice. Some areas must contain a minimum number of tokens, such as improvised weapons, coolant, energy cells and spacesuits, but others can be optionally topped up to provide huge benefits now or later in the game, and it's really important to understand this. Actions you take can have huge consequences later. Topping up these tracks will provide you with flamethrowers, halogen gas tanks for combat, and making the alien less hostile at the endgame, but doing this costs time and effort to collect, and this becomes a very strategic part of the game. Your character will also have 3 trait tokens that can be used for powerful actions like completing a crisis card option if unequipped to do so, or removing terror tokens from the board that advance the alien. However, if you are able to save these tokens for the endgame, it may increase your chances of survival during combat against the alien, but you have to balance this over their one-time use. Unlike the multiplayer game where the alien is present on the game board, in solo play it sits on a sideboard, and this is your motion tracker detailing its proximity. Dependent on your location on the ship, You'll be drawing crisis cards that provide a deep narrative and choice of actions available. These are generally based on how well prepped you are, asking you to discard certain tokens or cards, for example, and if not, the alien creeps closer down the motion tracker board. At times you can choose its route, but again, this will result in a negative effect elsewhere, like advancing the self-destruct timer one space. The more you explore, the more you'll draw crisis cards, but this means you're more likely to pull relevant cards for completing required objectives, like finding the ship's cat. I want to say Jonesy. Oh yeah, there's an android on board, and it's malfunctioned. It will gradually make its way to your escape shuttle and start destroying parts you've been collected during your turns. You'll need to make sure it doesn't get hold of you, as it's pretty tough, so either stay out of its way or find some weapons. As you can see, the game has a lot of moving parts, where the actions you've taken or the options you've chosen will affect the game later. You also need to be fully aware of your surroundings, as ending turns in rooms with vents or power outages will not end kindly for you. These include altering the strength of the alien during endgame combat, but that's if it manages to make its way onto your escape shuttle. You won't know until the end game, but you will know if your actions have made this more likely. Endgame combat against the alien is solely based on your preparation during the game and is carried out on another really nice sideboard where you can search lockers and activate the airlocks. Defeat the intruder or escape and you win. Lifeform builds a chilling and very tense atmosphere with a game that has a fantastic story and requires tough decisions to be made. At number 4, this game will have you in stitches. Abomination, Heir of Frankenstein from Plaid Hat Games is a worker placement set in Paris in the 1800s. You are a brilliant scientist with a morbid fascination for body parts. Here, Frankenstein's monster has taken your family captive and you must create a monstrous companion for them in order to save your family. But time is limited as the captain is aware of these experiments and is looking to put an end to them. The game doesn't come with solo rules, but Plaid Hat Games do provide a copy on their website. The game board represents the city of Paris, where your scientist and assistant meeples will visit different areas to gain bodies in various states of decay, from fresh executions to digging up graves. Other locations will allow you to gain knowledge or reputation tracked on some fancy dashboards. Ultimately, you want to be harvesting body parts to complete your monster shown on Cavida cards that you've gained, and these resources are represented by coloured cubes for bone, blood, muscle and organs. Depending on the level of your expertise and resources you have available, you can then begin to build your body parts. If successful, you take the appropriate body part token and construct your monster on your player board. Victory points are awarded dependent on the body part you've created and how fresh the materials you used were, because most decompose over time. If you are desperate or even a cheapskate, you can even harvest animal parts but receive much less reward. During play, the captain's investigators will also move around the city and block locations, and therefore any associated actions, as well as force you to either bribe, evade, or if absolutely necessary, stoop to murder. That has grave consequences, and the number of these investigators will increase over the course of the game. If your reputation precedes you, you can upgrade your lab assistants to PhD scientists to get better benefits at some locations, like taking a night shift at the hospital, if not robbing the mortuary. During the game, you'll need to collect Leyden jars, to hold lightning of course, to set off chain reactions and bring your monster to life, but you must have a complete body that includes attaching skin. Ugh. This action is quite luck based and you'll be rolling dice and assigning tokens, but can be carried out over several turns. The game provides a great system for resource management based on where the corpses are claimed and how quickly you can use them before they decompose. Some actions are grisly affairs, like visiting a dark alley, but may be necessary even though there can be severe consequences later in the game. There are event cards that provide an ominous story through short passages, but note that this is a very dark themed game with exceptionally graphic content and artwork. If you're able to construct and complete a monster and have all parts alive, you have succeeded in your family being safe. If not, well, you've seen how morbid the game is. I don't think it'd be deemed a fitting horror list without a game from the Arkham Files. At 3 is Eldritch Horror from Fantasy Flight Games, where you are an investigator traversing the globe to solve mysteries to prevent the summoning of a colossal ancient one and the end of humanity. This is the box to one of its many expansions, but in this video I'll discuss the base game and what the expansions can offer. When playing solo, I always use 3 or 4 investigators, as it allows for a richer experience due to the abilities and covering more ground on the board. During the game, you can travel by boat or train to explore cities, as well as gain travel tickets to support further movement. Depending on where you are, the investigators will then carry out encounters that provide a deep and rich narrative. These may require some form of test using skills carried out by rolling dice and hoping to gain successes if you roll high enough. There are many types of encounters your investigator may be involved with, from finding clues to ancient lore, expedition, or rumours that are active stories until solved. Your investigator can upgrade their 5 skills over time, and some tests will allow the use of equipment or spells that you have gained. Spells must be used with caution, as they can be quite powerful, having dire consequences if failed, and can lead you to insanity. During an investigator's turn, they may be able to acquire assets from a market-like area that include weapons, trinkets, and even vehicles. Desperation may result in you taking a loan, but be warned, they may come back for more than just what you owe. The base game comes with 12 investigators to choose from, each with unique skill values in 5 areas and special actions specific to them. They will also start the game in a particular location with their own set of assets. As for the ancient ones, there are 4 available, including Cthulhu themselves. The ancient ones will alter some mechanics in the game some way, such as changing cultist behaviour. They also have a unique deck of research encounter cards, providing clues in order to progress through the game. In order to defeat the ancient one, you'll need to advance through 3 or 4 mystery cards that detail how each card is successfully completed, like defeating the Dunwich Horror. This means with all the ancient ones and investigators, you have quite a bit of variability within each game. Each round culminates in a mythos card that generally provides a tough and unforgiving challenge and can spawn both gates into other worlds and monsters. Monsters require combat actions and can block card encounters if not defeated. There are some weird and wonderful creatures, from deep ones, star spawns, and even zombies, and require a sanity and strength check in order to defeat. Otherworldly gates are exceptionally important to manage, as they are sites for monster spawning and can align with the stars to bring doom upon the world if not closed. If the omen track aligns with these gates, then the doom counter moves down the track, and anything that starts with the phrase doom is never good. Gates can be closed by completing more complex encounters, so your investigators need to be quite prepared to take these on with regards to skills, assets, and a little luck. Some condition cards you've gained over the course of the game through curses, injuries, debts, or even those active stories may show a reckoning icon. If a mythos card ever shows this symbol, then all effects associated on every card and monster takes place, which can result in a catalogue of disasters, from losing health and sanity, advancing doom, or activating monsters. There are a load of small and big box expansions that add sideboard locations, additional investigators and ancient ones, as well as filling out the base game decks and provide some new mechanics. This game is a perfect starting place for a great streamlined and rich experience into Arkham lore. Is it a real horror list without at least one zombie game present? At number 2 is a true solitaire and tower defense type game, Dawn of the Zeds from Victory Point Games. This is the 2nd edition, and I believe there have been a few more editions released. The game is set during a zombie apocalypse, and humanity is losing, where you need to protect your town and surrounding villages from an oncoming horde of walking dead. The game offers 3 modes of play, from short to a campaign, which is the brutal and epic variant. The game board shows the town and surrounding areas, all linked by roads and paths that the Zeds will follow, as well as where civilians lie in wait, ignoring your warnings, at least for a time. The game is driven by a deck of event cards that dictate how the turn is carried out with regards to NPC activation, outbreaks, how the Zeds will move, and how many actions you get to take, as well as an event that will take place. During your turn, you essentially need to decide not only which actions to take, but the order, as your allowance is limited. Do you fight the Zeds at range with weapons but consume ammo, or hand to hand, but this is more risky? Your heroes can move around to various locations to search for resources, as well as antidotes and other NPCs that are all built into the event card stories. You may need to make use of the hospital to heal wounds, build super weapons and barricades, or go on a manhunt. There are so many options with such little time. Combat is essentially luck-based, but takes your weapons and hero type into account, so can be bolstered when needed. Civilians will turn to refugees when they come into contact with the Zeds and scamper back to the safety of the town, where they can then refill the ranks of fighters, but only if you choose. Zeds take the form of tokens with a random strength that are flipped on damaging, but can also be stacked, so you can become easily overwhelmed and outnumbered. You won't have enough heroes to cover all areas of the board for combat, so you need to make critical decisions on where to make your stand, and sometimes this is quite difficult. You may even need to sacrifice civilians for the greater good. The aim of the game is to survive long enough for the arrival of the National Guard that's buried somewhere deep in the event deck. And that's just it. It's a game of survival and it's tough. Your civilians will be lost, heroes won't make it back, and at times things become so dire you're sure the game will end in the next turn. But there are some glimmers of hope, like the arrival of VIPs and new heroes to make use of, or an 18-wheeler that smashes through the Z hordes like a hot knife through butter, and even a well-placed mine. But these are short-lived. The game is quite complex with a very long rulebook, as certain actions change dependent on the characters carrying them out. There are lots of side stories and NPCs such as bandits, rangers, raiders, and a mad scientist you have to arrest. Zeds can mutate into hideous forms like berserkers that move and attack twice, or those with thick skins difficult to take out, and others that become more aggressive when they take damage. Replay value is high as the event deck is constructed at setup, so you'll be acting based on current events and situations. The game has a good mix of strategy and luck, and although it's pretty tough and a brutal game, it's by far one of the best zombie games out there. If you don't mind games that start as an ever increasing downward spiral of despair and failure, then you're in for a treat. My number one solo game, perfect for the Halloween season, is another Arkham themed game, but this time from Simon Games. Cthulhu Death May Die is more of a dungeon crawler like game where you choose one of 6 episodes to play, each providing a unique gaming experience with regards to objectives, map layouts, as well as special abilities of monsters that you'll be facing. I don't want to give too much away with regards to the scenarios, so I'll concentrate mostly on aspects from episode 1. In solo play, I generally use 3 investigators that range from a psychotic nun to a pyromaniac child. Each episode provides a detailed account on the ritual that you'll have to disrupt and how to go about this, where cultists are trying to summon one of the Elder Ones, and in this game you get both Cthulhu and Hasta. Your investigators get actions to move and fight monsters, as well as heal and trade any items. The episode cards also detail additional actions your characters can take that are specific to that scenario. Combat and tests are resolved with custom dice that can lead to increases in your investigator's insanity level, but doing so increases the dice they can use in later tests, as well as gaining upgraded skills and abilities located on your player boards. Enemies are difficult to evade as they follow you around the board, so really need to be defeated or your objective becomes very difficult. You can also search and find items such as companions that lend you their skills and equipment that can be used as ongoing abilities or discarded for one-time effects. These slip under your player boards, but some items require a prerequisite in order to claim, such as taking stress. Certain enemies will behave differently based on the Elder Ones you selected to play against and the episode you are playing, so you have some good variability with each game, and the Elder Ones also bring in a unique monster to fight, including the robust star spawns. The components are amazing, from tokens to map tiles and artwork, but especially the miniatures, where some are huge and exceptionally well detailed. During the game, dreaded Mythos cards will be resolved, adding some malicious events and allowing the cultists to draw nearer to summoning the Elder One. Again, the mix of these cards is specific to the episode and the Elder One in play. Now, if for example Cthulhu is finally summoned, they cannot take any damage until the ritual is disrupted, so you need to act fast as these enemies are exceptionally tough, getting even more powerful as you damage them, progressing through various stages, gaining more combat dice and abilities. The game is very easy to learn and play, but it's difficult in its execution as you feel like you're spinning plates, and it provides a frantic experience which fits perfectly with the theme. The episodes included are fantastic, and each one can be played with an Elder God of your choosing, and managing 3 investigators is pretty straightforward. There's a second season available with more monsters and episodes, and a third hitting Kickstarter very soon. I hope you enjoyed my list of solo horror games. What are your go-to games? Feel free to let me know what your favourites are in the comments. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.